Thank you. That was perfect pronunciation of my first name. And next year, Rusitschka will be also perfect. I keep it until then. So, I'm Sebnem, and today I will tell you a bit of a brief history of energy and blockchain as well. I want to get into this whole real-world assets, refi. If you've been into DeFi, then you definitely know what those mean, and I want to help you to locate solar assets on that spectrum. I will get into adoption barriers. I mean, you heard Louise before. We're not there yet, and the crypto innovators need to innovate a bit more. But I would say, definitely we know now applicable DeFi primitives. They've been tried and tested by the very brave in the wild, wide west of Web3. And those are definitely also applicable to solar assets. You will see it's almost a no-brainer, but there are adoption barriers, obviously. And there are trailblazers. And interestingly, most of them are clustering around the Gnosis chain ecosystem. And I do believe we are, I'm very optimistic, 80% there. Okay, and I want to show what we need and have a call for collaboration, call for action, for participation, active participation, to bring those solar assets on chain so that a self-sovereign solar fund can emerge. Good. Now, I have to, brace myself, or you have to brace yourself, and I have to stop myself into going into too much detail. But it's also a retrospective of the past 7 years. I went into crypto or blockchain and energy because in 2016 there were already energy applications visible through Ethereum and smart contracts. And I only got into blockchain because of those energy applications. So just for reference, by the time when Satoshi published the Bitcoin paper, an electronic peer-to-peer cash system, I published, actually with colleagues at Siemens, a paper on peer-to-peer energy sharing using peer-to-peer technologies and smart metering. So that's how much I'm into peer-to-peer and energy. But crypto was a game changer, and it came from the periphery. And you feel this, that it's a real game changer, and people have difficulties to really grasp what is the game changer. Anyways, now I try to make it brief. As you see, already in 2014, we had SolarCoin, which was conceived as a loyalty program, 1 SLR for 1 megawatt hour. It was based on a Bitcoin fork, but with a proof of stake of time, adoption of the consensus mechanisms, because it doesn't make sense to put, energy, digital assets on a chain that actually uses up all that benefits at once. Anyways, now they're, for example, on the energy web chain that came years and years later. When I went into the space in 2016, 2017, Grid Plus and Power Ledger had their fantastic ICOs just a month apart. I don't know if any one of you have participated in those token sales and the networks? None? Okay. Well, anyways, Grid Plus had to do a pivot. They realized just going after peer-to-peer wholesale and disrupting an entire industry that is as old as you can anything think of, like hundreds of years established and critical infrastructure. You don't just come around and disrupt it. So they made a pivot into this hardware wallet company. And let's see what will come out of that. Power, the token of Power Ledger, is still trading, but not for the originally conceived, idealized reasons. And you might know it from the recent SEC case against Coinbase. It was one of the tokens deemed securities on that list. So, again, I'm a researcher, and I'm always very skeptical. I definitely see, like, we see the benefits, the idealized benefits of this technology, and especially in clean energy access, where there is literally nothing to disrupt. These techs could make a real difference. So 1 year after having left Siemens, I went into working on the Sun protocol with the Africa Green Tech startup or scale-up back then. And that was purely for funding the solar containers to bring clean energy access. And back then, you have to imagine these assets, the issue with that was the assets are being deployed in difficult regions, think war, and the token cannot do anything with that or help remedy any of that risk. And back then, we didn't have decentralized exchanges, we didn't have any notable risk management on protocols. So, approaching that, we saw the dead end in a sense that you have to be able to diversify those risks. At the same time, WePower had actually a nice ICO with the concept that could have worked, namely a marketplace for trading, buying, selling, and trading power purchase agreements. Now, I want to keep that in mind. They raised, I think, 40 million, but just in the second crypto winter, they didn't make it. So since last year, they're not around as is. And we'll get into that, how you could burn through 40 million in 4 years. Energy Web Foundation is still around. They built this since 2016, 2017. They issued in 2019 their token, which is a native token to proof of authority chain, energy web chain. What's wrong with that? Number one, it's working, right? But I personally believe there is an issue of incentive misalignment if Energy Web Foundation exists to bring decentralized energy to reality, but all of the, or most of the members of that foundation are actually big oil companies like Shell or centralized grid operators. So there's this obvious clash. And just 40 validators or authorities is not really decentralization. Well, anyways, and the last point where we went into around that time was actually seeing that this whole pooling, AMMs, smart pools concept in the balancer ecosystem back then, for example, could actually be used to pool solar projects in developing countries with solar projects in developed regions to de-risk and maximize the social and environmental impact of the whole pool. So that was electricity, where I went into around that time. And we kept developing, but it was so early that the smart contract developers even had difficulties to grasp what is it, and then apply it to solar power. So we did need all that excitement, hype, and experimentation of DeFi summer. Good. And maybe I won't even go into KlimaDAO, but just to say that also the environmental value of these solar assets, namely that you're replacing fossil fuel power with solar power directly, and you can account for that. That is an asset, and KlimaDAO basically created a protocol for issuing a carbon-backed coin, which is a nice concept. The problem was that the carbon credits they used were actually junk. And the issue is they were junk in the real world. So crypto, once again, just showed what's faulty in the existing system, but got the full credit for it. Of course, as with every innovation, and there were many other issues, or are many other issues, but the concept itself is really interesting. And around that time also, Unity approached me, Pedro, the CEO, and said, all of these things that you've been developing, are they happening for real? And we went into it, we developed. We definitely showed that you can tokenize that environmental value as well, alongside the revenue shares. However, again, I will get into that, why that's a problem. But before we get into the problems, please, watch this, the site. Okay, so every time I take a flight, I take a picture of these unused roof spaces, and I say, one of us has a choice. Air flights, fossil fuel is going to stay like that for the foreseeable future, but those commercial and industrial rooftops actually should have solar on them because it's a lucrative choice. So these commercial and industrial actors could save off of their electricity bills 40 to 60%, and at the same time also reduce their CO2 emissions and of the whole economy by 60 to 80% by not using the dirty grid power. And that's where you hopefully see how the real-world asset value is there, and that we can also tokenize what we call regenerative finance, or the environmental and social aspects value of these solar assets. The real-world aspect is pretty straightforward. We have the revenue shares from sale of solar, and those are long-term contracts, the PPAs. So that is an asset or a value stability that is pretty scarce in the volatile crypto market, and pretty scarce anywhere else for that matter. These contracts are inflation adjusted, so you have these revenue shares for the next 10, 15 years that you can tokenize and share and use for revenue-based financing. On the regenerative finance side, we have the environmental value of directly replacing kilowatt hour for kilowatt hour with clean solar, and replacing and displacing the energy mix that is mostly, for example, coal still in Germany. So, and ReFi can take that environmental value as well as the social value, but the other aspect is once you tokenize that, you monetize it and you use it for regeneration, meaning you reinvest that into more solar, replacing more fossil-fueled power sources. If that was so easy, why didn't Repower make it, right? So it comes down to this old wisdom, timing, and talent. And in 2000, or you've heard all of the issues that we still have today, and in 2018, it was really bad timing. We needed all those years, and we're still not there when it comes to regulatory issues. And if you think financial regulations is a nightmare, you don't want to meet the energy regulatory regions. So your assets are rooted in those jurisdictions. So we need to really come and create a solution that is globally and easily adaptable. And then we have two other issues that are really big anywhere, even or especially in the developed regions: skilled labor shortage, and then the basic, very obvious coordination failures between many parties that have business transactions with each other. Now, all of these issues can be remedied with education and with making technology accessible that they can really transact in a peer-to-peer manner. If I'm an individual participant or if I'm a business-to-business transacting party. Now, this is an overview, okay? And it was so much more complex just half a year ago, Because half a year ago, I had to explain how people need to, get DAI, get on a bridge, get XDAI to get on Gnosis chain where the contracts are deployed and actually participate. However, already within the last couple of months, so many, again, trailblazers entered the market or offer their solutions that we can now use. And all of a sudden, I can show that the solar asset managers are going to do their business as usual. They do the financial and technical due diligence of those clients and coordinate installers. And all of those assets are organized in an SPV, a special purpose vehicle or entity that is just founded for that matter. Now, those asset managers, when they participate in an association that makes these smart contracts and the interaction with them available to all stakeholders that need to coordinate, they can then offer these projects for participation, and anyone with an account on blockchain can participate in a self-sovereign manner. So that participation smart contract handles, how much I participate, how much tokens do I have, and how much of that revenue share I will get along the 10, 15 years of these power purchase agreements. And I can claim that EUROE on chain, or I can stake that back into funding more solar. Now, claiming is a taxable event. Staking it would keep the value in the network. However, if I wanted to trade, for example, my participation token, then I can do that on any decentralized exchanges, but we would, as a network, need to provide liquidity for those tokens. So these are all the DeFi primitives that have been tried and tested and that we know they work. They just don't work for everyone. So these people will be people who are not full-time crypto traders. And I won't go into more of the details because I don't have time, but if you're interested, definitely happy to share more of those aspects with you, and I will also share at the end a link. Now, the other aspect, the environmental value, that we also learned in traditional finance or decentralized finance or refi. People want to commodify it and trade it as a commodity. However, these are not commodities, and no one really wants to buy kilograms of CO2 other than traders. But those are not the ones who actually capture or exchange that value. So what we can do as an association actually is to make that value accessible to brands in the way they can make use of it, which is at this stage just digital. They could connect it to their websites or to shopping carts. But that's a service that the association provides for its members and the users of that value, and not something that can or needs to be traded. However, this whole value can be captured in the participation token if people participate. And again, there are trailblazers, especially in the Gnosis ecosystem, who enable participation of mainstream. Number one, Monerium. By now, hopefully everyone is a fan, where we can actually have IBANs to our accounts. And that's good for individual participants and especially for the solar asset managers, because we need those IBANs to really have no intermediation and no convoluted how-tos to transact the revenue share. Then we have Safe, right, with they're integrating all these on-ramps like Monerium, and also social login, email login. That will help so much on both sides again, because we need those solar asset managers actually do their business and not, jump through hoops, which they're not going to do. And for the self-sovereign solar fund to emerge, we really need decentralized participation. So for that, for example, we see features for mainstream usage of decentralized exchanges in core protocol and CoSwap. We need more of those usability features, especially also for liquidity provision. If these things become actions where you need sophisticated strategies, we're not going to have self-sovereign participation at scale. We're going to have a better trading system. And on the other side, facing the real world, again, there are so many trailblazers. Google Pay with the credit cards that could be easily, receive the solar cash back from the credits that have been integrated in the shopping experience of these products that have been produced using clean energy. The invoicing part is super important, and one interesting thing that just happened, I don't know if you heard about it, but Hopper actually succeeded in having the Swiss trade register accept the multi-sig wallet and account and the money on it instead of a bank account. Now, this is an amazing time lapse for actually creating those SPVs, right? Because, for example, now we're waiting weeks, up to 8 weeks, to actually get a bank account for these commercial solar pools that need a legal entity. Good, 80%. And as you know, the last mile is always the toughest, but definitely it will pay off to stay connected. I just, for myself, also need to accept that there will be many worlds. And we need to create those associations in which the, value creators in the real world actually can come and learn about how to use these new means and mechanisms of transactions and how to actually participate in a self-sovereign manner. So if you want, take your QR shot, and then you will be part of this evolving explanation and sharing of what that association needs to enable so we can actually democratize access to solar investments. With that, thank you very much, and I don't know if we have time for questions, or if you...
Thank you so much, Sebnem. To wrap up the conference at Studio A.